nominee to President-elect Donald Trump's cabinet. He announced David Shulkin as his pick for Veterans Affairs Secretary during his news conference yesterday. Mr. Shulkin is currently a top health official in the department.
I appointed today the head secretary of the Veterans Administration, David Shulkin. He's fantastic. He's fantastic. He will do a truly great job. One of the commitments I made is that we're going to straighten out the whole situation for our veterans. Our veterans have been treated horribly. They're waiting in line for 15, 16, 17 days. Cases where they go in and they have a minor early stage form of cancer and they can't see a doctor. By the time they get to the doctor, they're terminal.
Now, if Shulkin is confirmed, he would be the first non-veteran to lead the Veterans Affairs Department. Joining us right now, former Veterans Affairs Secretary, former GOP Chairman Jim Nicholson. Secretary Nicholson, thanks very much for joining us.
Good morning.
Your reaction, what do you think of this selection?
I know Dr. Shulkin. He's a very friendly, accessible, and conscientious man. The question's going to be, how committed is he to reforming this department, which drastically is in need of change. I've said this before, but the Secretary of the VA is the CEO of the biggest health care provider in the United States. That's a tremendous responsibility, and he does not have the authority that he needs to do the job. So there is legislation that's needed. He needs to be able to hire and fire. He needs to be able to move people around from one facility to another. He needs to be able to stand up new facilities, downsize existing facilities, and they need a private partnership with the private sector to help construct new facilities. That's not the sweet spot of the VA. So there's legislation needed, and there's a battle that goes with that always, and whether or not he's committed to doing that is something I've never talked to him about. But I sure hope he is, and if he is, I'm going to be one there to try to help him.
So you're saying, number one, he's an insider, so maybe he doesn't have the wherewithal or the desire to really change things dramatically. And then there's a whole bureaucracy going on within government that you think also needs to change in order to give him the tools to do what he needs to do.
Well, exactly, and there are a lot of stakeholders at the VA. You know, there are 22 million veterans in our country. About 8 million are registered for care in the VA, and really only about 1.5 million get care there on a regular basis. But there are a lot of people involved in that, and a new phenomenon has come up just in the last 8 years at the VA, a new stakeholder, if you will, and that's the unions. I was in a VA hospital recently, and on the walls, a picture of President Obama, Secretary Bob McDonald, the hospital director, and the chief union steward of that hospital, which bespeaks, I think, the role that the unions have taken within that large organization, which now has 370,000 employees. So that's even more complicating for the VA and the new secretary, because that helps limit his options of transferring people and shifting and balancing assets, the things that a CEO needs to do their job in running a big organization. And it hasn't been working, and it needs that kind of fix. So I sure hope that Dr. Shulkin is committed to that. I think President Trump is, and he will have his back.
Yeah.
But it's still going to be a tough lift.
Yeah, Secretary Nicholson, James Freeman here at the Wall Street Journal. It's all this question of, can this guy be a change agent? He's got the medical knowledge. He's been there, but maybe not too long that he's been captured by the place. He's taken kind of baby steps toward a more open marketplace, using private companies to deliver better care. Do you see more baby steps, or do you think it's possible he actually could be a serious reformer here?
Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. He's had that discussion with the president-elect, I'm sure, and the president-elect is committed to that. So I assume that Dr. Shulkin is. But it's needed. The reality is that some drastic reforms are needed if that organization is going to get fixed to become what it needs to be to deliver services in a timely way to our veterans.
One of the questions that I have right now, if you think about, you know, there's so much criticism. Is he a change agent? Is he not? But he has so much experience in the private sector. We're talking about how he managed hospitals in New York City. Do you think that, I mean, given this position now that he's going to be there, he's really going to bring that to the forefront?
Well, it's controversial within the veterans community, but, you know, it makes sense. If there's a veteran that has a medical need and is 100 miles from a hospital, that veteran ought to be able to go to the local health care provider, which is usually very good, and get his or her care without having to travel 100 miles or so to a VA hospital to get that care and to make the follow-up trips and so forth. And so there needs to be more integration. There are people that fear that this would be the end of the VA hospital system, which is totally dedicated to veterans. I don't think that's the case. The American people do not want that. They value our veterans for what they've done for us in this
Mr. Secretary,
country.
because it's such a vast government organization, when the government tried to allow greater veterans choice, essentially what happened was they put a layer of complexity on top of the veterans, hiring a third party to basically man the phones, and actually removed the authority of some states like Alaska, where they had a pretty decent program in place, putting veterans in touch with private health care providers, and they essentially did away with that. So again, it's like more government is never better.
Exactly right. It needs to be streamlined, and there needs to be much more flexibility. But that is full of controversy, believe me, because there are a lot of stakeholders involved in that. And the Congress and the President are going to have to help that new VA secretary if they're going to change that. But it has to be done if we're really going to make that organization what it should be and what it could be. We spend a lot of money there.
All right, we will be watching. Mr. Secretary, good to have you on the program this morning. Thanks for your insights.
Yeah.
Secretary Jim Nicholson there. Coming